You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The plan was to grab dinner after work with a potential client. A guy in logistics who wouldn't stop talking about golf and whose handshake felt like a limp fish. But halfway through our meal, I realized I'd left my work laptop at home. Not ideal since it had the pitch deck I was supposed to review with him after we ate. I excused myself, told him I'd be 20 minutes tops, and jumped in the car. Reese didn't answer when I called, so I texted her a quick, "On my way. Forgot the laptop." No response. But I figured she was probably in the middle of one of her yoga classes or watching some true crime doc in her headphones. We didn't keep tabs on each other like that. Or at least I thought we didn't need to. When I pulled up to the house, the driveway was empty. Reese's car wasn't there, which struck me as odd but not alarming. She mentioned she might go to the store after work. I grabbed my keys, still mid-scroll on an email, and headed toward the front door. That's when I heard it, the thump. It wasn't a loud crash or anything dramatic. Just a sharp thud, like something or someone had landed hard on the grass behind me. I turned around just in time to see him. A man, barefoot, shirtless, draped in what looked like one of our beige throw blankets. He was climbing over the second-floor balcony and dropped down awkwardly onto the front lawn. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating, like my brain hadn't caught up with what my eyes were seeing. We made eye contact. His face was pale, sweaty, panicked. Mid-20s, maybe, muscular. The kind of guy who looks like he'd pose for cologne ads in European train stations. He froze when he saw me, just for a second, like a raccoon caught in a flashlight beam. Then, without a word, he bolted across the yard, the blanket flapping around him like a busted parachute. He didn't even have shoes on, just bare feet slapping against the sidewalk as he sprinted down the block like his life depended on it. I couldn't move. I just stood there, keys dangling from my hand, staring at the space where he'd just been. The front door creaked open behind me. "Oh, hey, babe," Reese's voice rang out, sweet and casual like I'd just come home from a normal day at work. "What are you doing here?" I turned around slowly. She stood there, wine glass in hand, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing the gray UCLA hoodie she always stole from my closet. Nothing about her looked guilty. In fact, she looked mildly amused. "I left my laptop," I said. My voice sounded flatter than I meant it to. She nodded, took a sip of wine. Right. You texted." I was in the shower, didn't hear it. I blinked. "Who was that?" Her face didn't change. "That? Oh my God," she said, laughing softly, like I just caught her trying to sneak a cupcake before dinner. "That was Jordan, Lisa's brother." I frowned. "Lisa who?" "Lisa from the gym. You've met her, remember? She's come to a couple of our holiday parties." I tried to search my memory but came up empty. "Okay. And why was he here?" Reese sighed, stepping back to let me inside. "Long story. He came over with Lisa earlier. They were having some wine. Catching up. She had to leave to pick up her kid, emergency, and asked if he could just crash here until she got back." I followed her into the kitchen. The air smelled like coconut body wash and Pinot Noir. The sink had one extra wine glass in it. "He seemed fine at first," she continued, swirling her glass lazily. "But then he got super drunk and weird, like pacing around and asking if people were watching him. I don't know. I think he was having a panic attack or something. Then you texted, and I guess he freaked out and jumped off the balcony like some kind of ninja." I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. It sounded like a lie made up on the fly, but she delivered it like a practiced monologue. Smooth, polished, even amused. "He didn't have a shirt on," I said. She tilted her head. "Oh, yeah, he spilled wine on it. Took it off. I gave him the blanket." I just nodded slowly, as if that somehow made sense. Reese leaned against the counter, her expression unreadable. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, walking toward the office. "Just need to grab the laptop." She didn't follow me. Inside the office, everything was in its place. My laptop was on the desk, charger still plugged in. I picked it up and stood there for a second, the hum of the ceiling fan suddenly deafening. A barefoot man had just jumped from my balcony. A man I didn't know. A man who had clearly been inside my house while I was gone and while Reese was home alone. And Reese? She wasn't alarmed. She wasn't shaken. She was calm. Almost too calm. When I walked back out, she was on the couch, flipping through Netflix like we hadn't just experienced a full-blown soap opera scene. She didn't ask if I needed anything. Didn't mention Jordan again? You going back to the client thing? She asked, glancing up briefly. Yeah. Okay. Drive safe. I nodded. See you later. She gave a small smile. Love you. I didn't say it back. I shut the door behind me and stood on the porch for a full minute before heading to the car. As I pulled out of the driveway, my hands were trembling slightly on the steering wheel. My brain was doing that thing where it tried to make sense of something that didn't make sense, rearranging the pieces, twisting them into something that felt more familiar, more comfortable. But there was nothing comforting about what I'd just seen. A man half-naked, barefoot, afraid, had jumped off my balcony. And my wife? She made it sound like it happened every day. I didn't remember much about that next appointment. I was there, physically shook hands, nodded, probably made some half-baked comments about inventory efficiency, but my mind? My mind was still back on the front lawn, watching a stranger in a blanket run for his life. I must have checked my rearview mirror a dozen times during the drive. I wasn't looking for cars. I was replaying it, that split-second eye contact with the guy. That raw panic. That looked like he'd been caught doing something shameful, something dangerous. And the way Reese explained it. That's what haunted me. She didn't even flinch. After I left the client's office, I parked in a random strip mall and just sat there, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, staring straight ahead while the engine idled. My stomach was tight, like I was about to throw up even though I hadn't eaten since lunch. That's when the reel started playing in my head. Everything I'd ignored. Everything I'd let slide because I trusted her. Because I wanted to. Like the time she laughed into her phone in the laundry room, thinking I was still asleep. I remember waking up to that light, almost flirty giggle, the kind I hadn't heard in a while. When I came around the corner, she jumped like I'd spooked her, shoved her phone in her back pocket. Said it was her cousin sending a dumb meme. I believed her. Or last December when she went on that girls' weekend to Lake Arrowhead. She said it was spontaneous, just 3 of them getting out of town to decompress before the holidays. I didn't ask many questions. I trusted her. She came back with a sunburn and a weird story about their cabin running out of heat. I remember her saying we had to wear all our layers at once like kids in a snowstorm. But when I did laundry that week, I didn't find any thick clothes in her suitcase. Just light sweaters. And no photos. Not one picture from that weekend. That should have been a red flag. Then there was the phone, always tilted just out of my view when we were on the couch. She used to hand it to me to cue up music or to Google the answer to whatever weird trivia question we were arguing about. Lately? She clutched it like it held state secrets. Even at night, she started sleeping with it under her pillow. One time I made a joke about it. What, are you waiting for a CIA briefing? She just smiled and said, I don't want it to fall off the nightstand again. Like always, she had an answer. God, she was good at that. Even the bar receipts. That was a few months ago. She came home late, said her coworker's birthday dinner had gone long. She seemed buzzed but not sloppy. I found the receipt in her coat pocket the next morning. 2 cocktails and a shared dessert. 1 check. 1 signature. No mention of the group she said she'd been with. When I asked if she had fun, she said it was all right. Loud. Expensive. I didn't push. Then there was the charger thing. I think that's the one that stings the most now because it was so stupid and small and I bought it wholesale. A couple weeks ago, she went off the grid for almost a full day. Said she'd forgotten her charger when she stayed overnight at her friend Mallory's place. No response to my texts. No call back until the next evening. Her story, she'd passed out early and didn't realize her phone died. I remember teasing her. Guess Mallory doesn't believe in wall outlets? She just laughed and said we were drinking wine and venting about our husbands. It got emotional. I didn't even look at my phone. And I believed that too. Because why wouldn't I? That was Reese. She was spontaneous. Kind of flaky. But never unfaithful. That's the thing about trust. You don't realize how much of it is guesswork until it breaks. And once the questions start, they don't stop. Even her planner, that little leather-bound calendar she carried around like it was made of gold. I'd seen her scribble in it 1,000 times, but never looked inside. Once I joked about how it was her mystery Bible, and she said, if you ever want to know how I stay so organized, take a peek. I never did. Now, I wondered what I'd find if I did. Because now I wasn't sure it was a calendar at all. That's what betrayal does, it rewrites the past. Turns all your warm memories into warning signs. And the worst part? You realize you weren't blind. You were just choosing not to see. I kept telling myself I didn't know who that man was. That maybe it really was Lisa's brother or cousin or coworker or some guy who genuinely had a wine-soaked panic attack. But no version of that made sense. Because panic doesn't make you run barefoot across a lawn. It doesn't make you jump off a second-story balcony wrapped in a throw blanket like you're escaping from a hostage situation. It makes you look guilty. And he looked guilty. And Reese? She didn't look surprised. Not even for a second. When I got home that night, everything was as it always was. Lights on. Dishwasher running. Reese in her lounge clothes, hair up, glasses on, scrolling through her iPad. Calm. Comfortable. Like nothing had happened. Hey, she said without looking up. How was the pitch? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why there was a strange man in our house. Why she lied. Who he really was. But I didn't. I just nodded. Fine. I think she could tell something was different because she looked up after a beat and smiled, that small, practiced smile. The one she used when she needed a quick emotional reset. It didn't reach her eyes. I'm sorry about earlier, she said. I should have called you. The whole thing with Jordan was just weird. He's not usually like that. I stared at her, wondering if Jordan was even his real name. She tilted her head. You okay? I said I was tired. That I'd had a long day. That I was crashing early. She didn't argue. Just said okay. Love you. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the carpet. I couldn't prove anything. Not yet. But I felt it in my bones, in my gut, in that new, awful silence between us. The kind that doesn't come from a fight, but from something more hollow. More permanent. I didn't know who that man was. But I knew who Reese wasn't anymore. And that was enough. Sunday morning started quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet where your house doesn't feel like your house anymore. It felt like standing in a staged version of my own life, every object placed just right but none of it real. Reese had already left for her coffee date with Talia. I hadn't met Talia. I wasn't even sure she existed. I sat at the kitchen table, half-eaten toast on the plate in front of me, staring at nothing. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something, call it instinct, call it dread, made me pick it up. There was no message, no greeting. Just a single photo. It loaded slowly, each pixel revealing more than I wanted to see. Reese. Outside. On a porch I didn't recognize, curled up beneath a familiar beige blanket, the same one I'd seen wrapped around that barefoot stranger just 2 nights ago. And beside her? The man. The runner. No shirt this time either, but now I could see more clearly. He was tanned, lean, laughing as he looked at her. One arm slung casually over her shoulders. Like he belonged there. Like she did too. My stomach dropped. Then came the second message. A text. 5 words, no punctuation. If you want the address. Attached was a pin. A small cottage outside town limits. No name, no explanation. Just coordinates. I sat back in the chair, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. My first thought was, this is some kind of setup. A prank. Someone trying to blow up my life for fun. But no. The image, the way she leaned into him, her hand wrapped around his knee, it was real. Too natural to be fake. Too an asterisk made to be innocent. I didn't respond. I just grabbed my keys. The drive was an hour, maybe less. Long enough for my mind to cycle through every possible version of the truth I'd been trying to avoid. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she was just venting to a friend. Maybe she hadn't crossed the line yet. But I already knew. Somewhere between the first photo and the turnoff into the woods, I'd stopped pretending. The cottage sat behind a rusted gate, barely visible from the road. One of those Airbnb-style places people rented for retreats. Private. Quiet. A perfect hiding place. I parked just down the road, led the engine, and walked. My shoes crunched on the gravel. I kept my head down, hood up, like I didn't want the trees to see me. And then I saw it. Her car. Parked at an angle like she was in a hurry to get inside. Same plates. Same bumper sticker from the farmer's market she dragged me to last spring. I approached slow. My breath caught in my throat when I reached the porch window. There she was. Inside. Wrapped in that damn blanket. Her hair up in a knot. A glass of wine in her hand. And across from her, him. He was leaning in close, talking low. His fingers trailed lightly along her forearm. She smiled. Not a guilty smile. Not a nervous one. A comfortable one. A smile she hadn't given me in months. 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. A candle flickering beside them. her phone on the cushion face down. She looked happy. I didn't knock, didn't break the door down. I didn't even take a photo. I just stood there, unseen, until the tightness in my chest gave way to something worse, a kind of hollow acceptance. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Chosen. Repeated. I turned and walked away. The gravel didn't crunch so loudly this time. The ride back was a blur. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I kept checking the rearview mirror like I expected to see her chasing me down the highway. But she didn't know I was there. She had no reason to suspect. Not yet. I pulled into our driveway just as the sun started to dip. The lights in the house were off. She hadn't beaten me home. Of course not. She was probably still sipping wine, laughing into his shoulder. I walked inside and went straight to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, stared at myself in the mirror. And then something cracked. I didn't scream. Didn't punch the wall. But I laughed. Just once. Bitter. Quiet. I looked around the room, the house I'd worked so hard to build, to make comfortable, to fill with trust, and I saw all the fingerprints I'd missed. Subtle shifts. Things moved around without explanation. New wine glasses I never drank from. Receipts for places we'd never been together. And suddenly it all fit. The last-minute plans. The missed calls. The guarded phone. The hotel shampoo bottles in her bag when she claimed she stayed at Mallory's. The sudden interest in weekend hikes when she hated dirt. It wasn't just a man running barefoot from my balcony. It was the entire pattern hiding in plain sight. And I'd walked past it every day. Back in the kitchen, I stared at my phone again. The text. The photo. The address. I still didn't know who sent it. But they knew. They saw what I wasn't ready to. And maybe, just maybe, they were trying to give me a chance to stop being the fool. When Reese got home later that night, she came in like nothing had happened. Kicked off her shoes. Set her keys in the dish. Took a deep breath and smiled like she'd spent the afternoon sipping lattes with her friend. "Hey," she said, glancing at me in the living room. "Sorry I was gone so long. Talia and I lost track of time." She said it so easily. So cleanly. Like a professional liar. I looked up from my laptop and gave her a nod. "No worries. Everything good?" She blinked once, maybe surprised I didn't press. But she smiled again. "Yeah. Just a lot of catching up." I could see her scanning my face, checking for any cracks. But I didn't show her one. Because now I wasn't confused. I wasn't angry. I was awake. And whatever came next, I'd be ready. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I think part of me still hoped I was wrong, or at least hoped there was some piece of this that could be explained. But the silence that followed that Sunday night told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't guilt she walked in with. It was routine. She'd done this before. She was just better at hiding it. The next morning, I waited until she left for work before opening her laptop. She never logged out. Probably never thought she had to. She'd built her little fortress of lies so confidently that she stopped checking for cracks. I clicked open her cloud account. Photos. Calendar. Documents. Nothing seemed out of place. Then I found a folder labeled Kitchen Reno 2024. It was buried under an old budget spreadsheet. That was the story she told me months ago when she asked about opening a new credit line, that she wanted to renovate the kitchen. Said we could modernize the cabinets, get new fixtures, maybe even knock out that ugly dividing wall we both hated. I'd signed off without a second thought. It made sense. We talked about it before. But the files in this folder weren't blueprints or contractor quotes. They were receipts, wire transfers, copies of signed rental agreements. And every single one was tied to a man named Greg. Greg, not the barefoot guy from the balcony. This was someone else. Someone older, judging by his photo on one of the scanned lease documents. Gray hair, stiff smile. A signature that matched 4 other contracts buried in the same folder. There was a trail of transactions that led from our joint account to a company I'd never heard of. A fake LLC set up in a neighboring state. The payments weren't huge, but they were consistent enough to go unnoticed unless you were looking for them. Each one labeled as a project deposit. Only there was no project. There was no kitchen renovation. She had used the credit line, the one we opened together, to fund something else. Something with Greg. I checked the mailing address on one of the agreements. It was a condo 2 hours away, part of a new development we'd passed on the highway once. She'd pointed it out in the car and said, "Can you imagine living out there?" So isolated. And now apparently she could. My hands started to shake. Not from anger, not yet, but from realization. I hadn't just been lied to about a man or an affair. I had been financing another version of her life. A second identity. One where she could play house without the parts of our marriage that inconvenienced her. I dug deeper. There were messages, 2 emails between her and Greg. They used code names in the subject lines. Stuff like flooring samples or paint updates. But the body of the emails? They weren't fooling anyone. One said, got the deposit processed. Same card, he hasn't noticed. Another said, let's keep this timeline tight. He's getting suspicious. Me. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. The house around me felt too quiet. Like even the walls didn't want to acknowledge what was happening. This wasn't just cheating. This was theft. This was planning. This was a cold, deliberate effort to erase me from her life, one transfer at a time. That night when she came home, she kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed. Asked if I wanted Thai or sushi for dinner. I told her I wasn't hungry. She ordered anyway. Watched TV in her pajamas. Laughed at something on her phone. I watched her from across the room, feeling like I was observing a stranger playing a version of my wife in a sitcom. I didn't ask questions. I didn't flinch. Because now I wasn't just watching her. I was watching everything. Over the next few days, I became someone I never thought I'd be. I scanned her receipts when she wasn't looking. Forwarded emails to a hidden folder. Started recording calls when she spoke in the backyard late at night. She thought I was tuning her out, retreating into work, being distant. She had no idea I was documenting her like a case file. I even found an old burner phone in the back of the guest room closet. One I didn't recognize. There were only a few messages on it, but they were enough. Greg, Thursday still on? I'll bring the wine. Reese, yes. I'll handle the money stuff before then. He won't notice. He won't notice. Like I was some idiot in a boardroom she could embezzle from. Like I wasn't a real person, just a source of funding for whatever fantasy she was building. I took *TS of everything. Printed the lease agreements. Backed up her email archive. I even ran a credit report on myself and found 2 additional accounts I hadn't opened, both linked to the same renovation excuse. She'd signed my name. Fake my initials. I felt sick. I called an attorney. Not someone local. I wanted someone discreet. A guy recommended by a friend who'd gone through a messy split years ago. We met at a diner out of town. I brought everything. The lawyer barely blinked as he flipped through the stack. She's good, he said. But she's not good enough. That was the first time I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt strategy. We made a plan. He told me to hold steady, not to tip her off. He said the worst mistake people make in these situations is reacting emotionally. That wasn't going to be me. Not now. I canceled our joint credit cards the next day. Rerouted all autopays to my own account. Moved half our savings into a solo fund. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. I even called the fake renovation company, the one listed on the wire transfers. The number went straight to voicemail. When I looked it up, the address was a P.O. box. No physical location. No staff. Just a shell. She was laundering money through it. And I'd signed the paperwork. That night, I sat across from her at dinner. She was going on about some coworker drama, waving her fork like she was in a soap opera. I nodded, smiled, said the right things. She looked relaxed. Like she'd won. But the whole time I was thinking about that second condo. The place I'd never see. The one with new paint and throw pillows and probably a framed photo of her and Greg laughing over wine. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was replacing me. Bit by bit. Card by card. Lie by lie. And I was done pretending not to see it. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't even change my routine. Reese had no idea what was happening. That I knew everything. That while she was busy building a second life, I'd started dismantling the one we shared, piece by calculated piece. She still kissed me goodbye each morning. Still texted things like, "What do you want for dinner?" as if any of this could still be salvaged. I answered politely, sometimes not at all. She thought I was pulling away because of work. Or stress. Or because, ironically, she assumed she'd finally succeeded in phasing me out. She had no idea I was giving her what she wanted, just not on her terms. I made my second visit to the lawyer that Monday. We sat across from each other in a private room above his office, the kind used for quiet clients with messy stories. I handed him the rest of what I gathered: emails, texts, *TS of the credit card statements, recordings of conversations I had no business having. He asked, "You want to confront her yet?" I shook my head. Not until it costs her something. We discussed timing, asset protection, the laws around marital fraud and misuse of joint credit. By the time I walked out, I had everything set up: my own checking, a new health plan, even a clause waiting in the divorce draft to recoup what she stole under false pretenses. That night, I changed every password we shared, canceled every subscription she had piggybacked off of. The grocery card, the streaming apps, the shared email calendar. She noticed some of it. Came into the kitchen, phone in hand, brows scrunched. Hey, is the Netflix password messed up? I didn't look up from my laptop. Oh yeah, I reset it. Got an email about weird logins. She hesitated. Weird how? I shrugged. Someone in another state. That part wasn't a lie. She let it go. For someone as smart as she was, she'd gotten cocky. She'd never expected I'd play it quiet. Never thought I'd investigate, much less act on it. The next day, I backed up every document I'd touched onto an encrypted drive. Took photos of the receipts she left in the junk drawer. Copied the calendar entry she stupidly left uncoded. G trip, Thursday p.m. through sun, booked just 3 weeks from now. Greg trip. I even installed a motion-sensitive camera in the garage. She never goes in there. But if Greg ever did, if he stepped foot in the place I built with my own hands, I wanted to know. She kept smiling through all of it. Maybe because she thought the hard part was over. Maybe because she believed I wouldn't fight back. But the most dangerous kind of man is the one who stays silent when everything breaks. One night, she was in the shower. I heard the water running. The sound of her humming some indie song she thought made her seem effortlessly cool. I walked into the bedroom and opened her top drawer. Pulled out the same old leather-bound planner. This time, I opened it. Most of it was normal. Appointments, birthdays, doctor visits. But near the back, color-coded in pink ink, were initials. G, HVNC, DEC, SD. Below that, a note. Ask him about Hawaii. Push late spring. She was planning a vacation with him. In December, using our joint airline miles. When she came out wrapped in a towel, I was back at my desk, answering fake emails from a fake client I'd invented to keep her from asking where I was going so often. I even gave him a fake LinkedIn, fake Gmail. I was that far ahead. A week passed. I said nothing. I became harder to read, colder. She noticed. You've been off lately, she said one night over dinner. Is everything okay? Just tired, I said. Long days. She smiled and reached across the table, touched my hand gently. Anything I can do? That might have been the moment I hated her the most, because I almost believed she meant it. Almost believed that she still saw me as someone she loved, not just the fool she'd been using to pay for someone else's Lakeview. No, I said. Just need to get through the next few weeks. She nodded, already checking her phone. Probably texting Greg. The unraveling started the following weekend. I disappeared. Not fully, just enough to make her wonder. I said I had a work trip. Gave her a hotel name, even booked a fake flight using miles so the confirmation would look real. But I didn't go anywhere. I stayed with my cousin 2 towns over. Kept my location off. Let her think she had the house to herself. She did what I expected. Used the time. Invited him over. The garage camera triggered at 8:42 p.m. Friday. The alert popped on my phone. A man stepping through the side door. Head down. Hoodie up. Not barefoot this time. But it was him. The runner. Greg. I watched as he carried in a 6-pack and a white bag from that overpriced Thai place she always pretended to hate. By 10:30, I had a full video of them drinking in my kitchen. Their laughter muted behind the camera mic. At 11:03, she leaned across the island and kissed him. Deep, familiar, confident. She didn't even check to see if she was alone. She assumed I was halfway across the country. And when I watched her hand take his, the same hand that wore the ring I gave her, something clicked. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt free. I took the footage, added it to the folder, sent a copy to my attorney, and then I deleted the app from my phone. She didn't deserve to live in my mind anymore. When I returned Sunday night, she acted like she missed me, said she'd picked up groceries, asked if I wanted to do brunch next weekend. She had plans for us, imaginary weekends, imaginary dates, while I already had the divorce packet ready to serve. She didn't see it coming. She wouldn't until it landed, and I'd make sure it did, exactly when she least expected it.